2013's The Last of Us, genuinely, it's one of the best games of all time. It's not hyperbole to say that it was a step change in the standards for video game storytelling and visual design.
See, there's a sequel. Wasn't as good.
You know when your friend says, "Oh man, this tastes awful, here, try it," and then, shockingly, the thing is terrible? I learned from that childhood experience, and I did not play Last of Us 2 when it came out, but now I need to be able to talk about the show, so I finally played it. Let's talk about what's good, what's bad, why some people do actually like it, and most importantly, how this is going to fare as a TV show. And we'll make fun of director Neil Druckmann along the way.
I don't feel that I need to explain my art to you, Warren.
Now, it's been almost 5 years since the release, which makes me feel like I shouldn't have to say spoilers, but there, I said it. Most people remember the big stories about the leaks, and then Naughty Dog throwing gasoline on the fire by issuing DMCA strikes for anyone who talked about the leaks, or even the existence of leaks, like home improvement channels were getting strikes by accident from their scorched earth carpet bomb method. But even before all of that, there were hints that this game was not going to be great, and that is why, before it was even cool, I was already planning to skip it, or I was at least going to wait until a lot of reviews came in. See, early on, Druckmann described the theme of the sequel as being about hate, in contrast to the theme of the first game being about love. Also, Troy Baker, who voices Joel, said he wasn't really sure whether people were going to love it or hate it, but he knew nobody was going to be ambivalent. None of that was giving me warm fuzzies, and then the leaks happened, and then the story was revealed at launch, and for me, it all confirmed that I just didn't want to play this one. Now that I have played it, I'm not shocked to tell you that it tasted terrible, just like I was told. Worse, actually, in ways I wasn't even prepared for. The map? Come on, the map! We're talking about Abby's muscles when the plot has her finding Ellie's hideout because the map fell out of her pocket and she drew a giant circle with arrows pointing at it. However, there are some great things about it, and they shouldn't get glossed over just because the director wishes he were Kojima. The number one thing to praise here, as with all Naughty Dog games for several years, is the art direction and the attention to detail that makes this world feel so lived in, and it tells its own story. I picked this one up last year at a discount, and it was the original PS4 version, not the Todd Howard special update re-release, and it still looks amazing. What games like Last of Us and Uncharted show is that graphics are flashy, but they cannot beat real artists who understand color and shape and composition. Every room has tiny details scattered about to suggest the last thing that somebody was doing here, or what the room's original purpose was. Even places that you will simply be passing through do not scrimp on detail. That's what makes the difference. The art team was in love with making this world, and it shows, and it should be noticed. There were so many times I had to just stop playing and look around a little in wonder or in awe of a beautiful skyline or something. You could also see how dirty everybody was, which, well, that reminds me of something. I'm aware that I'm a basic bro in a lot of ways, and one of those is cleaning. I would just use dish soap if I could, top to bottom. But there is something that's just as easy and even more effective, and that is Kitsch products. Look at how simple this is. You got your body wash bar, works, smells really good. S for shampoo, C for conditioner, and they all go in this nice self-draining dish that sticks right to the wall. And it doesn't just work for me. I got a whole range of hair in this house. I got fine and stick straight, fine with some body, fine and curly, medium all around, dense and curly, super dense and curly, dense and coily, and these work for every one of them. My wife especially is telling me that her hair feels bouncy and moisturized and stronger because she's been using this Kitsch hair oil with rosemary and biotin. Now for the reveal.
Yeah, it's effective.
They said something about rice protein. Look, I don't know. It just works, okay? It's easy, it's affordable, it's available because they ship to over 90 countries. Now, these two guys right here are gonna be under $25 if you use the link below, QR code on screen, or code GREG. That's gonna apply a discount at checkout for 25% off the entire site. And Kitsch has a lot more than just these bars, so check them out. Another positive thing to point out is the acting. Now listen, I don't have a high opinion of Troy Baker as a person. I think he gets along with Druckmann so well because they both believe themselves to be once-in-a-generation artistic geniuses. But there is a reason that he is such a prolific voice actor, because he is incredible at it. And even though he wasn't even in this one much, he still showed up to work. Ashley Johnson also brought her A game back as Ellie. New to the series was Shannon Woodward as Dina, who was also excellent despite the character being useless. Even smaller parts like Jesse, Tommy, Lev, Yara, Abby's crew, nobody is phoning it in here, except the Seraphites, and we'll get to that. The final thing to praise is the gameplay itself. Now, I like this combat and exploration. I know feelings are mixed on this one. The areas felt curated, they had a good mix of stealth and action sequences, and the challenge of the game does not feel like an afterthought. I was playing on the standard difficulty at first, and all around it felt balanced and enjoyable and thought out. But you can adjust the difficulty in creative ways, like you can make your companion more or less aggressive, or change how easily enemies detect you. You can tune the amount of resources that you'll find. These are outstanding ways to change the difficulty of the game that are not simply enemy have more hit point. That being said, I greatly enjoy the gameplay, but there isn't really a way to level this up or keep it feeling fresh as the game goes on, or at least Naughty Dog couldn't think of a way, so some of the later sequences did feel a little tiresome even after I turned down the difficulty to speed things up. Though to be fair, could be that I just wasn't loving the story and eventually I was just trying to get through it so that I could make this video. So it plays well, it looks incredible, and the characters are pleasant to listen to. Sadly, for the show that's supposed to adapt this, it is a story-focused game, and the execution of that went about like a crackhead that I saw one time who was fighting with his hoodie that he was attempting to wear as pants. Hopefully I fare better in getting you to take revenge on that like button. Hold on, baby! So about that story, up front, this game falls into a storytelling category that I like to call bad thing is bad. And it made the experience nearly unbearable, and I think it's going to drag the show down. Did you know that violence and revenge lead to more violence and revenge? And if you chase violence and revenge, it'll leave you empty and broken. Have you ever heard this stunning revelation? And it's not that we can't tell the same moral more than once, or even that simple morals are wrong, but the execution here is especially sloppy. Now, I have watched a lot of defenses for this game, and many point out that it mirrors the first. I'm aware. The obviousness of the parallels is part of the issue. This game is a forced inversion of the first, and it is poorly done. When people, including me, say the message here is revenge bad, it's not a comment on the message itself, but on the shallow nature of that delivery.
What's your favorite part? The heavy-handedness.
Look, a Greek-style tragedy about the cost of obsession, that's pretty classic, but when combined with the clever subversion of Abby's late-game redemption attempt, it runs the story off the rails. Having seen multiple interviews with Neil Druckmann, I know he views himself as a subversive, renegade, genius auteur, on top of being the worst kind of male feminist.
He called that the sneaky fucker.
And with this game, he's falling into a classic artsy trap. The story is horribly bleak and depressing, and Neil believes this is deep and intellectual. My go-to example on this weird subgenre is the 2006 award circuit darling, Babel. Everything is horrible, and everyone is miserable. The end. Oh, you don't like that? No. You probably just don't get it. Nihilism isn't cool, gang, and that is exactly the story that Druckmann wrote with Last of Us 2. And it feels contrarian, okay? Here is part of a speech at a game conference that he was giving in 2013, just after the first game released. During the Q&A portion, he gives his interpretation of that famous ending scene.
And we come to that ending and that lie and that okay, and what does that okay mean? Well, it's definitely not a complicit, yeah, I'll go along with you. In fact, it's the opposite. It's Ellie for the first time waking up and realizing that she can't rely on him anymore. That while she loves him for what he's done for her, she hates him for robbing her of that choice. She knows that she has to leave him. She has to make her own decisions and her own mistakes. That's her arc going to the end of the line. The thing she wanted most in life is this father figure, but to become truly independent, she has to give that up.
Now, with that in mind, the second game feels a lot like Joker 2, doesn't it? Like, he's upset that the audience didn't interpret the ending correctly, so he needs to shove the right understanding of Joel's character in their faces. That's why the inverted parallels are so obvious. It's also a built-in defense so that proponents can pretend to be Neil deGrasse Tyson and use reductivist hand-waving to say things like, well, they're basically the same game with the same arc, but you don't like the second one? I wonder if you're a little homophobic, misogynistic. To paraphrase James Carville, who was paraphrasing Monsieur Robespierre, It's about the execution, stupid. At the time, there were many complaints about killing off Joel, but the real issue is not Joel's death, right? It's the method that they went with. Joel's story was complete, and he did some terrible things, so serving this character some mortal justice, that's not wrong, and he also does need to be out of the way if we're going to tell Ellie's story. Unfortunately, we didn't tell Ellie's story. In this game, Ellie is now a two-dimensional revenge monster, and we're subverting you by telling Abby's story, which doesn't hold any water without being predicated by and compared to Joel and Ellie's. Druckmann is just massively pretentious. Here's the thing, though. He does have writing talent. You gotta give that to him. It's in there somewhere. He was a co-writer for the first game, and you listen to his ideas in that speech, he's a creative guy. Unfortunately, he also has a massive ego, and he needs editing, which is where the first game's director, Bruce Straley, came in. He was able to get the good parts from Neil and cut the bad. With this game, and now this show, Neil is fully in charge of the productions and the company, and there is no one left to remind him to, breathe some fresh air sometimes instead of his own farts all day long. This game relies on shock tactics and very obvious emotional manipulation as its main selling points. And when you strip those away, you have a clumsy, badly paced, shallow narrative that is, bad thing is bad. After Joel has been unceremoniously beaten to death to let you know he's a piece of crap, Ellie turns into a rage machine, entirely bent on revenge at all costs, getting increasingly violent and reckless. You hunt down the group that tracked and killed Joel, but suddenly, the tables turn and you're playing as his murderer. The game then tries to manipulate you into liking this character, or at least understanding her side of things in very cheap ways. Look, her dad that Joel killed is a sweet guy. Look, she's saving a hurt animal. Look, she's like Sandra Bullock in Crash, suddenly thinking that these people are human after all when they help her. She's so open-minded. She even takes care of this kid who's been horribly, ruthlessly, disgustingly misgendered. Look, she loves this dog. She's playing fetch with it. Oh, wait a minute. Isn't that the dog that you, as Ellie, horrifically murdered just like an hour ago? Wow. Suddenly you and Ellie seem like terrible monsters, and Abby, by comparison, she doesn't seem so bad. Aren't you questioning everything you thought you knew? Isn't this subversion so cool and interesting? Okay. Obviously, I'm not loving this story. However, there are many people that do, and I can respect that. I tried to understand why. Watched several positive reviews. I also put up a community post, and I'm very grateful to have gotten some answers there, even if I still don't share the same view. But let's take a look at two major common points that I saw from proponents to see if the show could magnify the positive aspects that they're seeing, or if some problems could be fixed. I think the defenders are doing a ton of writing in their heads that did not appear in the game, like Troy Baker right here.
There's multi-layered. I remember the first time that Neil walked me down the story, and he was like, "This cycle of violence." That to me is at the foundation of this. But as you play through the game, not hear about the game, not talk about the game, but as you play through the game, what became more and more clear is that obsession will cost you everything. And even Joel heralds that in the very, very beginning, where he says there was a cost.
That sums up a lot of what I saw as defense. It's obvious what the director intended the foundation of the story to be, but let's search for a deeper meaning anyway. However, perhaps the show will take the opportunity to make some of the headcanon real canon and improve the storytelling. Now, the two general points that I heard many times can be paraphrased as, this isn't just about revenge, it's about forgiveness and seeing that everyone else is the main character in their own story as well. And, hey, this story is actually fine as it is. It's a really good idea. It's just that the pacing and the structure didn't do it justice. I agree that the pacing and structure are particularly awful, and I've seen videos with ideas to rearrange it that would make it more palatable. And I also agree that the theme of other people are real people too is an excellent one. In our personal lives, we can easily fall into solipsistic thinking, now more than ever, when everything that we consume is algorithmically designed to reaffirm what we already want. Unfortunately, I don't believe this game effectively tells that story, and it can't be fixed. Not with tweaks anyway, because it would involve tearing out half the foundation, and I'm speaking of Abby here.
This is some common bitch.
This character's existence prevents the story from ever being more than revenge bad, because her sole motivation for being and staying in the story is revenge. She might have a whole story on her own that could be interesting to tell, but the only reason for her to be here is because of Joel. However, the restructuring argument can at least make her less hateable, even if it doesn't ultimately sell that theme more. I've seen many suggestions that the show should open with the zebra flashback, and it wouldn't need much tweaking. That was a really solid scene. It was just misplaced. Start with this random guy and his daughter. They're having a great time. They're rescuing a zebra, talking about the crappy state of the world and their optimism for a cure. We realize this is right before the hospital scene where Joel kills everybody, including this doctor, Abby's dad. We end with her running into the OR, seeing her dad. She's crying. She's being pulled from the room. Boom! Black screen. Title card. Show starts. Now we're hooked, and we understand Abby. They also need to weave Abby in and out, intertwining the Ellie and Abby stories as we go through the season, not the way the game did it. The game wanted to shock you with Joel's death and Ellie's revenge before the big reversal. But we didn't even know who these killers were for several hours. And the scene doesn't elicit mystery or curiosity. I doubt in this form any viewers would continue to watch the show for several episodes, anxious to see who this mystery person is and what her motivation was. Hey, sorry, looks like they actually do know this, or they kind of do. Earlier this week, Neil was at a press conference, and first of all, he thinks the game worked because you open up playing as Abby for a minute. So he feels like that onboarded you and lets you feel empathy for her because you do a tutorial fight and then you run from a horde for a second, which that doesn't, sorry. Anyway, the point that they're going to rearrange the show. So he does realize that the shock and subversion tactics are not going to work. So honestly, that's a plus. Got to take the W's where we can get them, right? Without the gameplay to keep you engaged, Ellie's half of the story just isn't very strong. It's a basic revenge quest, padded by skirmishes with this new group, the Washington Liberation Front, which is the Fireflies from the first game with a new coat of paint. Like most of this story, you're expected to do the lifting by transferring your knowledge and feelings from the old thing to this new thing. The other enemies are the infected, which are not really their own character in this story like they were in the first. They basically exist now to drive the characters where the story wants when it needs to. They feel like combat padding more than anything. All of this is to say that even if we meet Abby earlier in the story and it's rearranged, Ellie still doesn't have much of a story, and her scenes, for quite some time, would just be walking around with this personality void, Dina, who doesn't have a character. She exists so that Ellie isn't monologuing her motivations to the air, and also to provide some emotional manipulation later. The restructuring would certainly improve the pace and make the show more watchable, but as I said, it doesn't fix the poor execution of the themes that it wants to tell, and that has to do with another unchangeable aspect, the Seraphites. Without Joel, Abby has no reason to be here, and without the Seraphites, she has no reason for her sudden change of heart. This group 100% destroys the themes of everybody has their own story that you don't know about, because they are two-dimensionally evil, faceless video game bullet sponges.
They're just not important, like they don't matter. Bottom line is, no one's gonna get in trouble. Nobody should feel sad at all.
For a story that tries to tell you that Joel wasn't correct for the hospital murders because look at the consequences for Abby, it sure has no problem inventing a group of stereotypical religious zealots who are primitive savages that live in wood huts in the forest and brutally murder their enemies by eviscerating them as they hang them. And that's on top of the polygamy, child brides, and transphobia. I just love that for people like Druckmann, the murders and the hanging and the gutting, that wasn't enough. They're also transphobic.
So initially Lev wasn't trans. I don't remember what made him run away from the religion, and we're looking for a reason for that. So that was one thing kind of happening in the background. And then we have a few people on the team that really kind of are the spearhead as far as diversity, is making sure that we just don't fall into the traps of kind of creating the same kind of characters you've always seen.
Sure.
And exploring different people with different backgrounds, different identities, and therefore trying to make our story richer by doing that. And there was a pitch to make I think Yara trans, and it didn't work for me because I felt like just Yara needed to be more traditional in this very kind of I don't want to say traditional, but oppressive religion. That's not the right word either. But then the brainstorm kind of turned into Lev, and then like that became interesting to kind of explore this idea of another version of the cycle of violence and bigotry that can exist within organized religion.
Again, the story undermines itself when Lev and Yara don't leave the cult because they disagree with its stated goals, but because Lev can't act like a boy and be a soldier. They don't have character arcs, they're just running. Lev is a black hole of charisma and would have gladly been just another faceless grunt patrolling the woods if the Seraphites had allowed it. These two are a plot device to shove the story along and get you to transfer your Joel Ellie feelings onto the similar looking mold of Abby Lev. Back to the show again, there's no way to fix this. It's too baked in. They can't get rid of these characters because Abby never had her own motivation. She simply did what the plot said, so she needs them. Even with them, she still shoots every problem she comes across, but her redemption is just changing the target. They can't remove the trans storyline because that would cause a riot, so the best outcome is just Lev gets some personality instead of ignorant, sheltered cult child who knows nothing.
Did you grow up in the woods? Are you Nell? From the movie Nell?
The core structure of this game, and soon show, prevents half the story that they wanted to tell. The defenders are usually defending one of the two main themes, revenge obsession and its cost, or empathy and forgiveness. And they are really good themes that they can make great stories on their own. But this game tries to mix them in a way that cannot work. There is no way to tell the tale of empathy and forgiveness while Abby exists as a main non-villain character, even if they rearrange the storytelling. Not only is the final message hopeless and nihilistic because the world just sucks and nobody can really be right or wrong if you're empathetic to everyone, but Abby also comes packaged with the Seraphites, who are wrong, contradicting the theme that Abby is supposed to represent. That is why the common complaint is revenge bad, a cycle of violence. Only at the end of the game do we see a glimmer of what the story could have been. It could have been amazing.
I'm not trying to.
I was supposed to die in that hospital. My life would have fucking mattered. But you took that from me.
Right there. That is Ellie's story. First game didn't set her up for a flat revenge quest. It set her up for an exploration of survivor guilt and a search for meaning. This story kind of attempts to have her find that meaning through revenge, but it's thrust on her right as the game opens. It's like not a question that she's been wrestling with for years like Abby has, but we don't really see Abby doing any wrestling, so that was poorly done as well. For the show, they cannot, but they need to, start from scratch, minimize or eliminate Abby, and focus on Ellie's search for meaning. That is what the audience will connect with. Anyway, sorry, I hope I wasn't too hard on the defenders. I'm really not mad at anybody for liking this game. I don't see it. And I don't think the TV audience is going to see it either, no matter the order in which it's told. However, I have even more fears that the show's not going to work out. One of those is Bella Ramsey, who is returning to play Ellie. She will need to carry whole scenes, and she does not have the charisma to pull that off. I know a lot of folks are getting tired of the guy, but Pedro Pascal has charisma and presence, and in addition to simply having a stronger story to work with, the first season fared well because Pedro did an excellent Joel. That season changed Ellie's character, however, to be more astringent and independent, which not only made her insufferable, but also it undermines the revenge quest in the upcoming season. Like, she didn't even seem to care about Joel that much. Why would she murder a bunch of people for him? Bella is not Pedro, and viewers are not going to be invested in her or her character. As we've already touched on, the other characters in the show are flat as well. Dina is a supportive sounding board. Lev is an ignorant savage cub. Jesse is comic relief and supposedly emotional death. Yara is also supposedly an emotional death. The bleak nature of the story, coupled with the relativized morality, means you really can't truly engage with any of these characters. Likely what you're going to hear about this show are criticisms that it is boring. That's the word that people are going to use when they just don't feel anything for anyone on screen. Another reason that it's going to be boring is because somebody got greedy and it is being reported that this game is going to be turned into 2 possibly 3 seasons of television. Cirque du Soleil performers can't stretch that hard. There is no way this stays interesting if they're going to tell the same story. Now, the final concern is, of course, Druckmann himself, who has been in the news lately because of an interview with screenwriter Alex Garland. Among other topics, they were talking about the reception to this game and the criticisms that Neil brushes off.
We made a game with The Last of Us 2. We made certain creative decisions that got us a lot of hate. A lot of people love it, but a lot of people hate that game.
Who gives a shit?
Exactly.
Well, before the game came out, he infamously stated that they don't use the word fun when talking about video games. They say engaging. Basically, Neil doesn't care about your enjoyment. He cares about you thinking he is a genius, and it's going to make the show abysmal to watch. In addition to rubbing out his high-minded ideas for you on screen, he's also going to talk down to you. Neil knows what a brilliant writer he is and how deep his stories are. So, through the characters, he's going to state extremely obvious points to you multiple times so that you simple-minded children can get his incredibly complex tale. So, what are your predictions for this show? Do you think that they're going to change some characters, fill in some gaps, maybe rearrange the delivery perhaps? Let me know your theories below. I appreciate you watching as always. I'll see you next time.